Cup of Joe with Grampa Dez. And I'm here with David Lovell, my good friend from the UK. David, finally got you on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. How
Good
are
to
you?
hear. I'm excellent. I'm excellent. Spent the whole day shoveling, so I'm nice and refreshed. My arms are jacked. It's a wonderful time to be alive here in Winnipeg. We just got about 30 centimeters of snow in the last 36 hours, so it's pretty
Yes, I
crazy.
saw the picture of Emily waiting for the bus.
Yeah, I had to go pick her up. The bus took her to school, but they wouldn't pick her up. So yeah, we this is a Cup of Joe with Grampa Dez, as you can see by the nice little logo that Mike Gilbert made me in the top right hand corner of your screen. And I've got my friend David here. We just finished recording yesterday. We did our fourth Canada show for his Facebook Land show on Mixcloud, which is a music shows that David puts together. And I want to ask you about that before we get into the meat of the show, whatever that's going to be. I was just curious about how you started doing this because we only really, I'd say, became acquaintances and friends, about a year ago. And you've been doing these shows for, since the pandemic started, it appears. And then, before that, you were obviously doing other shows because you're posting, classic shows. And I'm just curious about how you got into that.
Well, I started out in hospital radio,
Okay.
which is that's kind of the way most. I don't know how it is in Canada, but over here, your sort of pathway to a career in radio starts with hospital radio.
Okay.
So I started doing that in about 2009,
Yep. Yeah. And
and
you've talked
then
about that on your shows.
yeah, I mentioned it quite a lot.
Hmm.
And then I've done internet radio shows from about 2010 till now. Obviously, I do the show for CMR Nashville
Hmm.
every week, two shows for them. And I started doing the Facebook Lounge show, as you say, March of last year. Everything shut down. The job I was in at the time, I was on what they call furlough. I don't know if you have that in Canada as well, where
We call it something else, but I know what you're talking about.
yeah, so basically you get paid to sit at home because you can't work because
Right.
where I worked was shut down because of the pandemic. So I just started doing the shows and people were requesting songs. So they were in the same boat as me. They were all sat at home looking for things to do, and I was kind of giving them some entertainment by playing them music they wanted to hear. And it kind of just went from there, and it's continued to be a real sort of labor of love, to this point where okay, the audience has changed a bit. Folks like yourself and Dan Luque and Jeff Hawkins and others from the Facebook group have now sort of become the audience
Hmm.
because it was a. I mean, some of the audience I had to begin with are still there, but it has sort of evolved and changed. But yeah, no, it's still going from strength to strength. I've done nearly 450 shows now.
Wow. When I'm listening to some of your old shows and I hear some of the names and it's like, yeah, I recognize that person, I recognize that person, but then there's some that I don't recognize. But I've enjoyed the shows. You made a show for me for my birthday, in which I was incredibly honored and I'd seen your posts about the shows and I'd never actually clicked on them to listen to them. And I'm like, well, he made a show for my birthday. I got to listen to that. And
Well, yeah,
then,
because at the time when I did the show for your birthday, I really had no idea. I mean, we hadn't
yeah,
really talked much,
no,
and I just looked at your Facebook page and
yeah,
saw the artists that you liked, and some of them you weren't really a big fan of, but
no.
like was it Tegan and Sarah? I think randomly was on there, and
Yeah,
but
and,
yeah, there
but
was Garth Brooks. I mean, I think I played the
yep.
dance, which is
Yeah,
a pretty
you
safe
made some
bet for
good
Garth Brooks.
picks. Even on the one, like, even in Tegan and Sarah, like, you picked a song that I didn't know, but I really liked. It was, I think, something about awesome, and I just remember
Uh,
liking it.
yeah,
Everything
everything
is
is
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, I started listening and then I started and I would request songs for Emily if you had a particular subject or or artist that I knew she was familiar with or that she liked a certain song, and then she started liking listening to your show specifically to hear her name, but then also the song. So it's like it's a combination. Every time she hears you say hello, Emily, she just loves that. And then the song itself, like I mean, I pick songs that I know she likes. So and I've sent you videos and stuff. So yeah, so I mean, we've become, I'd say quite good friends over the years. Obviously, we've never met. Hopefully, we'll meet in person someday. And we've had a few conversations over video and audio. Obviously, we do the Canada shows together, and we chat, a lot every day. I talk to you probably more than just about anybody. So I'm happy to have you, face to face here as it is. So, is there
Yeah,
anything in particular you wanted to talk about today?
and also, I mean, just to
Okay.
go back to what you were saying, there's not many people I would actually agree to do this with either, because I'm
Okay.
not a video. I'm an audio guy. I'm an
Yeah.
audio guy. I don't like video. I'm not keen on it. Why would anyone want to sit and watch us,
You know
talking to each
what? I
other?
agree with that. And I mean, and I'm the same. And I've had conversations with our friend Garrett, who's kind of my boss when it comes to the freelance podcast I do. And I'm like, why would anybody want to watch us do video? But people do. So
There is.
I've
I mean,
actually
this
put
show is doing really
together,
well.
yeah, it's all right. I've put together, like a little bit of a background so people hopefully aren't staring at my ugly face and they're looking at, stuff in the background and hey, what's that over there?
I mean, I haven't
Um
really. I need to work on my
Oh,
background, but
why? You do audio and you do great audio. You know what? The quality of your audio is incredible. And I would say, like, even when I listen to your shows, I skip through some of the songs, but I listen to every single word you say. And and the quality is excellent. And it's gotten better. Because when I listen to the early shows, I don't know if you've gotten a better mic or if you've just gotten better, if you're positioning yourself differently or what, but it's much better now than it was when it started. So
I mean, I always listen back to everything I do because that's the only way you get better. I mean,
exactly.
I think you gotta. I mean, yeah. I mean, people say, "Well, why would you want to listen to yourself?" But that's the only way you get better is by listening and hearing. I made a mistake there, and I could improve here, and yeah. So that's what I always like to listen back to everything I do. Sometimes you sort of grown a little bit, or especially the older shows when you listen to them back, you're like, "Oh, what was I thinking there?" I mean, but yeah, I mean, you just evolve and get better over time, don't you? But so
I would
we
you'd hope
obviously,
so. You'd
well, you
hope
would hope
so.
so, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously, we talk a lot about wrestling and a lot about music. What I wanted to talk about on this show, because you kind of threw it open to me to sort of choose what topic we talked about. I wanted to sort of go into a bit of detail about the sort of TV shows that we
Oh,
both like, because I
awesome.
think we
Yeah.
might have some similar interests there as well, just based on what we've talked about in the group.
Well, you
Like,
you
yep,
posted a GIF or GIF, I never know how to pronounce that, but of Ally McBeal, and, I
right.
know
That's
because
what
I
put
re
the thought into my head because you
Oh,
said that
okay.
was one of your top five
Oh,
favorite
yeah.
shows.
Yeah, so, I mean,
Um,
yeah, and I've been asked on occasion, and actually, that might be even a good starting point, I obviously, I don't have anything prepared, I don't know if you do, but, when you talk about 5 and I don't know, it's interesting where you'd put that show, whether you'd put it as a comedy or a drama. I think I'd put it as a comedy. You're obviously a fan of Alameda. What are you drinking? I got Tim Hortons.
I've got some cider,
Okay. Is it
Matches
hard
Rose.
cider?
It's a very sweet cider from, I think can you see it says Somerset cider on there?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't think we have
Somerset
that
is
here.
the county I'm from here in the
Mm.
UK. But, no, I mean, I really enjoy Ally McBeal. I was always a big fan of Robert Downey Jr. I thought he was a really great
Oh,
actor, and
yeah.
I liked it when he came on board, but more so the earlier ones, I think, before before he, came into it. I really enjoyed the earlier ones more, I think. But no, if I had to pick like a favorite TV show, I mean, I always loved Cheers.
That's a good one.
Cheers is one of my favorites, and then Frasier as well, both of those. And I mean, Taxi. I mean, it wasn't
Oh,
on the air for very long,
yeah, it's like 3 years
but
maybe.
it was the same writers as Cheers, I believe. I
Yeah,
think I'm
James
right in saying
Burrows.
James
Ja
Burrows. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And yeah, I mean, Taxi was what launched the career of like Danny DeVito. I mean, he'd
Tony
done. I
Danza.
mean, him and Christopher Lloyd both had been in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest actually prior to
Oh,
being in
wow.
Taxi.
Andy
But
Kaufman was on that show?
Andy Kaufman, Judd Hirsch,
Oh,
Mary Lou
yeah.
Hanna, who still looks great to this day, and she must be what must be in her 60s,
70, six
maybe
60,
even
70, yeah.
70s. Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, great show. And Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Seinfeld
So a
was a
lot of
great show. A
comedies.
lot of
Uh,
comedies, yeah.
yeah.
But the first series of 24, I thought the first series of 24 was great. I mean, the other series were great too, but that first series was about as perfect a TV show as you can probably get. I don't know if you ever saw 24, but
Oh yeah, yeah. From right from the start. I mean, when people ask me, and and I've actually had this conversation with Oliver Kopp, who's a good friend of both of ours, because he's involved a lot in whatever shows make television in Germany. He'll get screeners of those shows, and then they kind of look at them and decide, okay, will this get over with this audience or not? And then they decide. So he sees a lot of these shows before they're actually out there. And so when we've had these conversations, like, and at other times too, I've had them, and I always instantly go to dramas. I don't know why. I think part of it might be to make myself look smart, because it's like, oh, you want to pick a show that like is critically acclaimed, and so and it's not that I don't like these shows, and I do. Like The Sopranos, Mad Men, I really like. Uh, The Shield is one I just watched
yeah,
not that long ago. I'm in the middle of watching The Wire right now.
because
So
the
those,
Shield was going back to 24.
yeah,
The guy that played the president in 24, David Palmer, was in. I think he was in the Shield as well, wasn't he?
he might have been.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah,
Yeah. Dennis
Dennis
Haysbert.
Haysbert.
Yeah,
Dennis
Dennis
Haysbert. Yeah.
Haysbert. Yeah, and I mean, and so that one was one that when I finished watching it, I couldn't believe. I would say out of all those in those genres, Mad Men is definitely the one that is right up my alley, because I like the ones that have a little bit of humor, and flawed characters. And I think that's why I like Alan McBeal so much as well. So in actuality, like, I'm talking to you and I'm talking to a good friend, there's no way I would not put Alan McBeal on that list. But if I'm trying to impress people, I leave Alan McBeal off the list, because I think it would be kind of maybe considered a guilty pleasure. All those shows you mentioned, I liked, and I probably watched every single one of them, every single episode of them. I would also add shows like Modern Family to that list,
Mhm.
which is another one that I watched all the way through. Roseanne was a big favorite of mine.
Roseanne. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And The Middle is one that not a lot of people talk about, but I think it was like an kind of almost like an updated version of Roseanne. The way you look at me, maybe haven't seen it. It
I've
stars,
not. No.
yeah, it was in the 2000s, and it lasted for about 8 years, and it had the mother from Everybody Loves Raymond was the mother on
Mhm.
the show, and the dad was the janitor on Scrubs.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was the two of them, and they were basically just a Midwestern family with three kids. One of them was really smart. One of them was a jock, and the other one was like a smart female that was, like socially awkward. So you had kind of the sitcom tropes, and it lasted like a long time. I really, really enjoyed that show. They kind of just, the kids grew up, and when that happens, the show is kind of over. It started out, the kids were all like teenagers, and I think the youngest was like maybe 7, and by the time it ended, they were all like adults. So it's kind of hard to do that show when they're like that. But they were poor, and it was very real, and I kind of like that. That's what I liked about Roseanne too. Um, and then, like, so in terms of like UK, like, I know some of these shows were based on UK shows, and some of them were direct ripoffs. Like The Office, for instance,
Mhm.
was, I think season 1 was like every show was like a scene for scene
Yeah.
dialogue remake, right?
The original Office, the UK Office, only ran for like 2 series, but obviously the American one has gone on and on and on.
Yeah.
They're both great. I mean, I enjoy both the American and the British version of both of them, and that doesn't always happen because you watch American versions of British sitcoms and they don't work at all.
Hmm.
In fact, very few of them have actually been successful.
Three's Company
Um,
was a remake of a British sitcom, I believe, wasn't it?
I believe so. I can't remember which one it was off the top of my head. But I mean, did
Yeah.
you ever see? Speaking of UK shows, did you ever see Faulty Towers?
Yes.
Yeah,
John Cleese, right?
John Cleese from Monty
Yeah.
Python. Yeah.
Yeah, that was big. So CBC here in Canada, which is the public broadcaster, they air a lot of UK shows, or they did. I haven't really watched a lot of CBC in the last few years, but like Coronation Street was, the last
Oh,
time I
okay.
checked, was still airing. Like, I don't know if it's even still on, but if it is, I'm sure it's
Oh, it
airing.
has. I mean, it's been going since about 1960.
Yeah, so it's Sunday mornings in Canada here. I don't know when it airs over there, but
It
Um,
airs too often. It's on
okay.
like three times a week.
Okay. So it may
Yeah,
be here too. I know when I've seen it. But then we've actually gotten, even in Canada, there's a lot of Canadian shows. Probably the most famous one is Schitt's Creek. And I'm
right.
not swearing
Yeah,
by saying that because it's
no.
SCHITT''S. Not that we're not allowed to swear in this show, but that one's won some Emmys. And then Mr. D's is a show that just got picked up by Amazon Prime, so I think it's going to get some critical acclaim soon. It stars a guy, Gary Dees, who's a comedian, and he's a teacher. And the show's actually done, but it's being put onto Amazon Prime, so I think it's going to get some love. And then SCTV was big in the 80s. That's kind of a Saturday Night Live type show with Canadian actors. So a lot of like stars that nobody knew back then became stars later. John Candy was on that show. Catherine O'Hara, Eugene Levy, all got their starts on that show. And then, so is people from the Second City comedy troops. So back to Alan McBeal for a second. You brought up Robert Downey, and I loved him on that show too. He's one of my favorites. It's one of the only people who, if he's in a movie, my wife and I will both go watch. It doesn't really matter what it is. And I thought that show kind of jumped the shark in the last season when they brought on John Bon Jovi as the house painter, if you remember that.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And then he didn't sing like everyone else in that show sang except for the main character, and then him. And and Robert Downey Jr. sang, and he had a great
Well, he
voice.
sang with Sting, didn't he? He sang
Yeah.
with brought Sting up on stage.
Yeah, and he did the River, great version of that song.
Oh, the Joni Mitchell song, yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant version. I played that on
Yeah.
a few of my Christmas shows.
Yeah, we'll request it this time because it's one of Anne's favorites. So,
but yeah, he's a. See, the trouble with Robert Downey Jr. in recent years, he's only sort of done Iron Man and Sherlock Holmes, and that doesn't show the versatility that the guy has, because he's such a versatile actor. And unfortunately, when he was showing that range, he was in a different place in terms of obviously with drug issues and what have you. But yeah, I mean, he's a tremendous actor, one of the best actors of our time, I would say.
I saw a meme the other day of Robert Downey Jr. and it was perfect. I'll send it to you. I was just looking for it, but he said in this meme, I every so often I feel like I want to have a drink with dinner, but then I remember I have plans for Christmas. And that pretty much sums it up. And it's funny because our friend Steve, who we're going to be recording a show with shortly,
yes, after we wrap up here, we'll be doing a Full Gear preview show. But I keep looking at that Blues Brothers picture behind you, and
we're on a mission from God.
Transition into films as well a little bit. We can talk about our favorite films.
A few more minutes.
I think a lot of our favorite films would be the same as well.
Blues Brothers right up there.
Oh, it's got to be, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, Dan Aykroyd. I mean, you were talking about the. Was he on that show as well, or did he sort of? He was a big.
SCTV, he was. I'm trying to think. I don't think so. No,
but he was a regular on Saturday Night Live, though, wasn't he?
Yeah, and that was before SCTV. So he may have done a cameo.
Right.
Martin Short was on the show. He was all over that show. He started his Ed Grimley character on that show, so that he brought that over to Saturday Night Live a few years later. But yeah,
I mean, the Blues Brothers, that's got to be up there. But I mean, what are your sort of top 3 or 4 favorite films?
Rocky IV is a big one, and they just did the re-release for whatever reason. It's most people hate, that like Rocky, that's their least favorite, but for me, it's my favorite. Can't really explain why. Forrest Gump, Shawshank Redemption, Dazed and Confused is a big one for me. If I'm flicking through channels and I see that show, I just don't stop. I just keep watching until it's over. And then one that not a lot of people will mention, and it's just a pet favorite of mine, is a movie called With Honors. That was in the early 90s. It starred Joe Pesci and Brendan Fraser. And and it was a movie set in Harvard, and Joe Pesci played like a vagabond that was really, really smart, and he kind of befriends this group of really smart kids, and they end up helping him get his, get a some sort of a degree or a credit or something at Harvard. And it's just a very touching movie. And I paid to see it like 3 times in the theaters. Like I cried over and
And
over
what was
again in
that
the
called? Sorry,
movie.
With honors.
With honors, yeah, yeah.
Okay, I must look
One of
into that.
Brendan Fraser's best acting performances, I think.
So that was
Um,
before he became sort of big, because
oh
I
yeah,
I think his
yeah.
big breakthrough was probably The Mummy,
I
and
think so. Yeah, and this would have been a few years before that. Um, and there was a couple other. Josh Charles was in that one. I can't think of the woman was. She's been in a bunch of other stuff too. So it was like a lot of younger actors that became famous kind of later on. And then Joe Pesci was obviously the big star of the movie at the time, but it was a more serious, like there's obviously some comedy in it. You can't not do comedy with Joe Pesci, but it was probably his most dramatic role, I would think, because even in like movies like Goodfellas, he was like almost like the comic relief in those movies. So in this one, it was serious as well as comedy. So I really like
Yeah,
that. What
Joe
about?
Pesci really added a lot to the Lethal Weapon films. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
I thought
yeah.
the first Lethal Weapon was good, but when they added Joe Pesci, I thought all four films. I mean, a lot of people say like the third and the fourth maybe weren't as good, but I enjoyed all four of those movies.
I liked 3 the
Um,
best personally. But I mean, I
Three
have
was
weird
really good. Yeah.
tastes. Like for the Star Trek movies, I think the one I liked was like the 4th, where they came back into the 80, like into the present time. Like for
Oh,
me, that
was that that wasn't the one where they had Captain Kirk and
I
Jean-Luc
think
Picard?
so.
Oh,
Maybe.
Generation. I think it's called Generations.
Maybe, I don't know. The one
Yeah.
I just remember they came back in time to like now, and that's why I liked it, because I wasn't a big Star Trek fan. So I had a girlfriend at the time that I think it was like our only date, and we went and saw that movie, and then we broke up. So and I didn't like her that much, so that's what kind of why I have fond memories of that movie.
But yeah, for me, I mean, you mentioned Shawshank Redemption. That's one of my favorite films, um, and I put The Green Mile
Oh
up
yeah.
there. And you talk about crying at the movie. What was it called again? Your With Honors.
Yeah, with honors. Yeah.
You mentioned crying at With Honors, but I mean, The Green Mile. I mean, who hasn't seen that movie and cried? And I mean, Stand by Me.
Oh yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
all three of those films, Shawshank, Green Mile, Stand by Me, are all based on Stephen King
Yeah, and you had that on
works.
your one of your surprise
One of
shows.
the surprise shows. Yeah, that's
Yeah, and
right.
we
Yeah.
we got it on the Stand By Me song actually, which not a lot of people realize that that's a Stephen King short story. But yeah, I that Stand By Me, wow, great cast, great
Yeah.
movie. I've seen
I
that one a
mean
number of
I mean, the
times.
best of them all was probably River Phoenix, and so
Yeah,
it's really a great tragedy what happened with him.
yeah.
But around the same time that Corey Feldman did Stand by Me, he also did The Goonies. But you haven't I don't think you've seen The
Nope.
Goonies, have you?
No, it's one
No.
of those ones that I just never got around to. Great soundtrack. Love Cyndi Lauper's theme song. Love the video that
You
had all the wrestlers in it. Captain
Yeah.
Lou and Roddy Piper and a few others, I think. Yeah, so yeah, it's and then anything like recent. Like I mean, I like the I don't really see a lot of newer movies, but we really like the Iron Man movies and
Yeah,
and
I've seen quite a few of those. I can't remember the last time I went to the cinema. It's been a few years since I last went to the cinema. Yeah, I don't I love films, but I just never really sort of sit down and watch them for whatever
we went
reason.
and saw it on the recommendation of our friend who I haven't talked to much lately. I haven't seen him around, but Darren Wadsworth recommended that we see Suicide Squad, and we really like that movie. So I would if you're looking for something to watch that's relatively recent, I'd recommend that one. Great comedy in that movie and action. So it was right up our alley. We loved it. So
Okay, yeah. I mean,
but
I enjoyed the Avengers movies for the most
yeah,
part.
yeah. The
Um,
Avengers movies were great.
and the
So yeah,
first Guardians of the Galaxy, I don't think the second one was quite as good, but the first Guardians of the Galaxy
I haven't
was
seen
really
those
good.
movies, but Anne saw them on a plane flight and recommended that I watch. So I do have that on my list of movies I got to see. Right now, I have to watch this movie called Home for the Holidays that I've never heard of. Because
That's got Robert Downey Jr. in,
no,
isn't it?
this is a different one.
Oh, this
Maybe
is a
I
newer
might
one,
have
is
the
it?
title wrong. I have the director of that movie coming on my show in 2 weeks, and he
Oh,
sent
okay,
me
yeah,
a
because
link.
there was a Home for the Holidays that was like years ago in like the 90s with Robert Downey Jr. and Jodie Foster, I want to say maybe as
Yeah,
well.
I think you're
Um,
right. I'm just
but
looking to see what he sent me a screener copy of the movie, and I'm supposed to watch it before we do the interview. What is it called? Yeah, it's called Home for the Holidays. Oh no,
Okay.
sorry, Hope for the Holidays.
Hope for the Holidays.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's I think he's a Christian, so it's one of those movies that has like a lot of Christian actors and probably a positive theme, and no swearing or anything like that in the movie. So yeah, I got to watch that, and then I'm going to be talking to him on the show in 2 weeks. So I think we're just about out of time. We went a little bit longer than what I said we were going to, but that's fine. And we got to record a show right away. So and I mean, the plug has been going across the bottom the whole time. So
Yeah.
hopefully people will check out your shows. We just recently put up that Canada show yesterday as we're recording. So this will air Monday. So it was last Thursday. But
So
as it's also
tonight, if it's Monday's recording this, it's a Twofer show, and it's Barry White and Hart.
Yeah, Hart, who is one of my wife's favorites. In fact, her profile picture on Facebook will often be me, her, and Anne and Nancy Wilson. So a rose between three thorns. And that's an inside joke. And then yeah, there's my Patreon and then our YouTube channel at Fight Game Media. So so yeah, so thank you, David, for coming on. And for
Pleasure was
David,
all mine.
it was mostly mine, but thank you for saying that. So for David, I am Grampa Dez, and this has been Cup of Joe with Grampa Dez. And that's a wrap.